First of all, introducing our challenger.
Out of the blue corner. He's going to step in and he does. It's all over.
Let's bring on the boom.
This is Eternal MMA.
Right, welcome back to another special edition of the Eternal Insiders Podcast. Joining me is Matt Bones-Williams as we break down the cards that are coming up. Of course, we are breaking down the next card coming up on the Gold Coast at the Southport Sharks, that being Eternal 94, headlined by Darcy Vendy versus Matt Myers for the Eternal Middleweight Championship. That on a list of absolutely incredible fights, and we're here to talk all about them, as we have been doing for the last couple of months. And I've been loving doing them. Matt, how are you doing, brother? It's good to have you back here to talk about some fights, talk about all the good things coming up. Always a pleasure to have you here, man.
Yeah, I really enjoy these chats too, bro. It's a ton of fun. Obviously, incredibly passionate about our regional MMA down here in Australia and New Zealand, and really excited for yet another installment of Eternal MMA. The momentum is certainly behind us, coming off a massive card in Sydney and then up in Perth only a couple of weeks ago. Two incredible cards. So the bar's been set pretty high, and on paper, this one's certainly got the firepower to be able to supersede those. So it's going to be a good weekend up there in Queensland.
Yeah, you're heading up, of course, yeah?
I am heading up indeed. I'm heading up on Saturday morning. I'm heading up. So pretty shitty weather up there with Cyclone, ex-Cyclone Alfred hanging around. So just a fly in, fly out for me on the Saturday. But yeah, really looking forward to it, bro.
Yeah, get in and get out. From everything we've seen so far too for this card, fastest selling card in Eternal MMA history. That bodes pretty well for a good night of fights and a big crowd in attendance.
Yeah, so look, some of the names on there. There's some star power. The Prince of the Glitter Strip, Josh Kuhn, making his return to the Eternal Cage. Pound for pound, probably the greatest ticket seller in Australian MMA, and for good reason too. Incredibly exciting, and they're a really good guy to boot. Successful businessman down there on the Gold Coast, and some other fan favourites as well. So, not surprised it's selling out. I'm not sure if there's any tickets left. But if there is, you'd want to jump up and snap one of those up quickly, because they'll be like Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory tickets.
Yeah, they're going quick. I don't know if it's officially sold out yet, but yeah, definitely check out eternalmma.com to see if you can get yourself some tickets down there at the Southport Sharks. Spiritual home on the Gold Coast for Eternal MMA. Yeah, Josh Kuhn, you just mentioned there, had him on the podcast the other day. Great dude, great fighter, a lot of fun to talk to. Like you said, big ticket seller. So can't wait to see him back on the card for the first time in almost 18 months. But we're going to look at all the fights down the list and break them down as we do. Of course, I mentioned at the top of the show that this one is being headlined by Darcy Vendy, the new Eternal MMA middleweight champion, who'll be taking on the former champion in Matt Myers. Of course, Darcy Vendy captured the title late last year at Eternal 91 when he took down John Martin Fraser in the third round with a highlight reel KO over the former champion. Incredible fashion that he did that in. This will be his first title defense since then, of course, against Matt Myers, who also beat John Martin Fraser when he captured the belt, had to give that up through injury, so never officially lost the belt inside the cage, but they're coming back to get inside the cage together and throw down. And we've talked about this on the podcast in some recent ones go by, that it's great to see the middleweight division here in Australia finally ticking along again, and we've got some real competition. And these two boys are just some of the best, arguably, the two best middleweights in the country. Of course, Darcy Vendy, not arguably because he's a middleweight champion for Eternal MMA, but a lot of momentum behind him now on a 4-fight win streak. He's really just come into his own at this part of his career and really sort of showing what he's made of against a man in Matt Myers, a man formerly from New Zealand, now residing in Victoria. Coming back and getting himself back into the cage where he belongs after a bit of a layoff due to injury, but he's certainly earned that spot. This is a real clash of the Titans. Always get excited for an Eternal MMA championship fight, but this one I've been looking forward to for so long, ever since it was announced. Cannot wait to see this one go down. This is exciting.
Yeah, it's incredible, man. Like middleweights, it's one of the most entertaining weight divisions at the top end, because you got such a mix of, raw, explosive power, knockout power, devastating knockout power, but still the speed and athleticism to carry it the distance too. And over 25 minutes, should this fight go the distance, that it'll be action packed the whole way, especially when you got two guys who match up stylistically the way that the champ Darcy Vindy does, the usurper, and Mad Dog Matt Myers. Of course, Matt Myers never lost the bout. As you precluded to, he had the ACL injury, and it was a full ACL tear. So they either do the hamstring graft or the patella graft, and that's about 12 months before you're back moving around, especially when you're a big guy. I bump into Matt from time to time down here, being a Victorian lad, and he's even like a short time after the surgery, he was still looking pretty good neck. So I think he's really taking care of his body the whole way through. They're a stellar camp out there at Adrenaline MMA. Chris Brown, the former Olympian, wrestling Olympian, leading the charge. They've always done well in the wrestling department, but they're really good strikers too. Of course, Aiden Aguilera, former champ, he was fighting out of Adrenaline, great striking. The guy got guys like Val Sharapov, and when you're talking about Matt Myers, he's got really creative striking. So he'll throw elbows, lead with elbows, and close range, elbow up, flying knees, the spinning kick that flatlined John Fraser. Incredibly entertaining guy, up on his toes, and crashes through range with devastating punches and very hard kicks as well. And then he's got an excellent offensive wrestling game, particularly up against the cage. So he's a real problem. The questions around Matt Myers is like, what is that amount of time? What does that amount of time out of the cage equate to coming into a championship fight? Look, you can't talk out of too much out of school, but from what I've heard, some of the sparring sessions that he's been putting in at AET up in Melbourne, Australian elite team, they've got a bunch of UFC talent. He's in incredible form, so he's coming ready to crack, and he's the kind of guy, Matt Myers, that not too much gets to him, and I think if anything, he probably feeds off a little bit of crowd hostility. I think he liked being up there in Queensland. He's not going to be put off by too much. He's from the Whangapoa Peninsula out there on the Hibiscus Coast in Auckland. They breed him pretty tough out there. He'll be looking to come and take Vindy's head off. Man, Josh, I was so impressed with how Vindy put it all together for his title shot and to claim the title. He looked so good. And then no one had been able to push John Martin Fraser back and pressure him in the opposite direction. And he did such a good job of it. His kicks were on point, lightning fast kicks. His dirty boxing was something that really stood out to me. Darcy Vindy's dirty boxing in that fight, and then his ability to strike out of that. He's a real problem. And, just stylistically, the way these guys both like to come forward and take the center of the cage, I think that's probably going to be the key. It's going to be what makes it so entertaining. But I think whoever can take the center and maintain the center and spend the most time there is going to put themselves in the best stead of coming out with their hand raised and the eternal middleweight champion when all is said and done.
Yeah, there's so much to like about the fight, not only just from the fight perspective, but I mean, for both of these guys, like I have a lot of interest in both of these guys' stories. You talk about Matt Myers, and you mentioned obviously they're from Whangapoa in New Zealand and coming over. I probably butchered the way I pronounced that, but I did look it up the first time that I ever talked to Matt. Was that not too bad? Not too bad from a guy from Australia? Cool. Right, I'll take it. Coming over here, I think he was 15 years old and came over with his mum, or at least where he met his coach, Chris Brown. Met him. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think maybe his mum worked in a doctor's office or something like that. And his coach, Chris Brown, actually came in with a bit of a cut in his eye to be fixed up. And his mum inquired as to what was about and found out that he was involved in combat sports. And in Matt's words, he was on a bit of a rough path as a kid with a bit of not a lot of guidance in his life. And that's when he met Chris through his mum and got into the gym down there at Adrenaline MMA and hasn't looked back ever since, and that sort of put him on a really good path to where he is now. And he's a really like don't let the quiet demeanor fool you. You know what I mean? Like he's a real quietly, nicely spoken guy, but he's an absolute killer in the cage. He's Mad Dog for a reason. So, yeah, I've really sort of enjoyed sort of seeing how he progressed. It sucked to see him sort of deal with the injuries and everything that you just touched on there. But it's been really good to see him come back and get to this position. And great to see him in a title fight, because he obviously never lost that belt, at least inside the cage. He gave it up through to the injury. So it's a well-earned position for him. And then a guy like Darcy Vendy, look, he's really come into his own, like not only as a fighter, but as a human being. Like, we talk about the fighting aspect, like not only on a 4-fight win streak and now the middleweight champion, but now at a part in his life and his career where he's a lot more sure of himself now, like a guy that, for all intents and purposes, always had a lot of skill, always kind of had the tools, but by his own admission, just didn't have it up here to sort of put it all together and, straighten a lot of things out in his life, put it, a lot of things together for himself mentally, went through like a lot of maturing and sort of self-discovery, and it's sort of helped him realize like this part of his career now where he can, potentially really go on to take this kind of to the next level. And he just seems so at peace with himself. And I mean, you talk about, it's a long time ago, but for a guy that has a win over the man who's going to be competing for the UFC Welterweight Championship in Jack Della Maddalena, like one of only 2 guys to beat him. Of course, it was way back when, but it was, it's still a victory. And a guy that's, had a wrestling match against Robert Whittaker, who's a very sound wrestler. Like, there's a couple little real sneaky little things in Darcy Vendy's career that not a lot of people know about that point to something that he's always kind of had, and he's really showing the fruits of his labor now, as the Eternal MMA middleweight champion. So to see these 2 guys to come in and throw down, put that middleweight championship on the line and see who comes out on top, it's an extremely fascinating matchup from all those perspectives, and wish him nothing but the best. It's very exciting. You get the best seat in the house to see this one, man. I was there to see Darcy Vendy for that fight against John Martin Fraser. Man, he's such a big boy. Like, can't believe like how much of a strong big man like he is. And making a guy like John Martin Fraser look, I won't say small, but smaller. And Matt Myers, such a big dude himself as well. So this is like a real clash of the Titans type fight.
Yeah, proper Titans. So Matt Myers, I've seen him up around, I know he'd be close to 100 kgs, like outside of fight camps, I'm sure of it, because I set up around that. And, he's a big, tall, loud, big, thick boy. And when Darcy Vendy turns up to weigh-ins, there's not much left on him in terms of body fat, just a pair of white Calvin Kleins, and looks like he's been carved out of white granite. So, yeah, they're athletic boys, and they can hit hard. And like you say, best set in the house, mate. No place I'd rather be.
Yeah, we get that one after we get Josh Kuhn, the returning Josh Kuhn, after an 18-month layoff against Jesse Medina, a former featherweight championship contender. In his own right, of course, Josh Kuhn, we alluded to the fact at the start of the podcast that, one of the main reasons why this card is selling out so fast, you stick Josh Kuhn on any card, probably anywhere around Australia, but especially, in his home state there at the Southport Sharks, where he got so many fans. He's such a popular guy. And for good reason. It's not just a personality. It's not, it's not just who he is and, the many things that he's involved in creatively or even just the martial arts. Like, it's everything that he's put together, and he's cultivated such a following because of his personality and everything that he's got sort of skill-wise. So I'm so happy to see him back finally in the cage. A guy that, started his career, if you count his amateur fights and his pro fights, like 6 wins off the trot, like 3 wins at amateur, 3 wins as a pro, all inside the first round, right up until he met Dim Skillies in the fight of the year in 2022. One of, if not the greatest fight we've seen in Australian MMA history, at least outside of a title fight. Just absolutely incredible theatre there that we saw from those 2 guys. He finally got himself back in the win column against James McBride. I think it was back at Eternal 78. After he had a couple of losses after that Dims fight, we had the Dims loss, then lost his next fight, back in the win column now, and then he sort of had that layoff now to come back and keep the career going inside the cage. And yeah, fighting against Jesse Medina, definitely the most experienced component that he's had. Definitely the most experienced man that we have on the card. 32 pro fights for Jesse Medina. So in terms of level of competition for Josh Kuhn, like, this is a massive step up, at least in terms of the experience factor. But yeah, look, you talk about a stylistic matchup, and you'll talk about this better than me, but for a guy like Josh Kuhn, who, where he makes his money is with these bad boys right here, throws everything with reckless intent, albeit I did talk to him recently and he started to kind of, just mature his game at the right time and start to put things together a little bit in terms of not just, head hunting and just being a little bit more calm in the cage. And he's going to need that coming against a guy like Jesse Medina, who sneaky for, 16 wins and 16 losses, has, for all of his wins, only one of his wins hasn't come by way of finish. So like a very dangerous man is Jesse Medina. Like, don't let that record fool you. Like a very strong competitor, like we said, a former featherweight title challenger for Eternal MMA. But yeah, this is a cool little fight. Josh Kuhn back on the card. Jesse Medina, well-traveled veteran. This is a fun one in the co-main event.
Yeah, great intro, Luke. That's summed that up really well. I think I know Jesse Medina so well from him being a Victorian lad, and it just feels like he fights every second weekend. He's not even that old. I think Jesse would be around 32, 33 years old, something like that. Just feels like he's been here for eons. Look, I remember a time where he was fighting and he was 10-2. I'm pretty sure he was like 10-2 at one stage. He was just flogging everybody. Picked up a win down here in Melbourne over Jack Jenkins, where Jack Jenkins was young in his career, like Triangle Jack Jenkins. He's had some really good wins along the way. Of course, it was in the rematch with Jack Jenkins on Eternal. Was that for the title? I think it might have been.
Yep.
And that, geez, that'd be 6 years ago now.
Yeah, it's wild how quick the time's gone. Yeah,
it has. And I'd say that was 6 years ago. And since then, Jesse's fought an absolute shit ton, but I don't even think he's been finished. Like this guy, like you mentioned, it's a stylistic matchup. He's incredibly resilient to strikes. I think and I'm just thinking back and trying to remember his last few fights. He's got an excellent submission game. I think that's kind of where he's been found out. He doesn't go to decision too often. He either he's kind of a live by the sword, die by the sword kind of guy, and either submits people or he gets submitted. You got topology up there, Luke?
Sure do, mate.
You beauty, you see nodding in agreement. See, this is all the kind of, I can't remember where my car keys are, but I can remember how Jesse Medina, like this guy from Mildura, is.
I'm glad you can remember that stuff, mate, because like I rely on all the notes here. Like, I like to make it like seem like, everything's ripped off the top of my head, but I got some notes here going on. Tapology is well and truly open on my big 32-inch monitor up beside me.
Yeah, beauty. So it's a really interesting fight, and I think guys get in with Jesse Medina, and they underrated striking a little bit, but they shouldn't. He's a pretty crafty little boxer, and comes from that years of experience. But he's always been pretty good with his hands. Hasn't got devastating knockout power, but he knows how to use it to set up his takedown. So that said, Josh Kuhn has a different kind of power, right? I think the only fight of his that's been to decision would be his one versus Dimps, and Dimps is you need a 308 to put out Dimps Gillies. I think like he's Teflon plated, but Josh Kuhn has a different kind of power. So I think for Jesse Medina, there's going to be two safe places in this fight, and that's either all the way out of range or all the way inside of range, inside of Josh Kuhn's arms, where he can start to implement a grappling game. Josh Kuhn's shown he's got pretty good anti-grappling defense. I think I remembered someone telling me that his first fight, might have been Cam, told me that his first fight, they're trying to get him a boxing fight, and they couldn't get him one, so they threw him in, and he had to learn how to sprawl in like 2 months and do a bit of BJJ, but then he started knocking everybody out. So over time, he's turned himself into a complete mixed martial artist, and he's at one of the best teams in the country down there at CMBT. So getting in the work, an exciting fight anytime you've got him involved. Jesse Medina, he's been around forever. He's got in recent times he hasn't been in the green too often, but he still serves a real purpose in our division. As long as he's there, he's entertaining, which is really important. He's tough and resilient, and he's kind of a gatekeeper to the top of the division. I'm not sure what Josh Kuhn's plans are beyond this fight, or if he has any, but it's a really exciting co-main event, especially up there on the Gold Coast.
Yeah, Josh Kuhn's another one of those guys that has like an incredible story in terms of where he's come from. If you talk about it from the fighting perspective, like when Josh first started fighting, like he'd only been, from his first amateur fight, had only been even hitting pads inside a gym for 4 years. That's not even like, fighting or sparring like that. 4 years prior to his first amateur fight, had just started learning how to throw a punch, like at a punching bag. So it's pretty incredible, sort of the power and technique and everything that he has, and everything where he's sort of come from. And I mean, like you said, at the right gym there in CMBT to sharpen up his skill set and prep him for the fights as they have been. An interesting little stat that I put together and I was talking to with Josh when I had him on the podcast only a few days ago. Just looking at all of his wins across his amateur career and his pro career. So he's got 7 wins all told, right? I think I totaled up across all of those wins, only 11 minutes and 9 seconds in the cage so far. So across all of his wins, like he hasn't even totaled like a full 3-round fight, at this stage. And even if you look back at like his first however many wins when he was knocking everyone out in the first round, like he hadn't even I think through his first 6 wins, he hadn't even totaled a round at that stage. You know what I mean? So it's, he's definitely, his box office, the power in the hands and everything, like looking to come and knock you out. But I've enjoyed sort of seeing him add a couple of little things to his game, and he was willing in his last couple of fights to kind of test out the grappling a little bit, which he didn't sort of look too bad in. I don't know if that's something he can necessarily explore in this fight against a guy like Jesse Medina. It shows he's coachable, and it shows that, even for a guy that's I think he's 31, 32 now, he's still learning these facets of his game. And for a short amount of time that he's been doing this for, he's carved out a really good little skill set, and he's just exciting to boot. So, sign me up for this one in the featherweight division, Josh Kuhn versus Jesse Medina, returning for the first time in 18 months. But I mean, you talk about a return for another CMBT boy. Tim Quick Draw Moore returns for the first time in almost 6 years, taking on our former bantamweight champion in Rod Costa. What a fun little fight this is. I remember when this first got announced on one of the previous Eternal cards on UFC Fight Pass, and seeing this one kind of came out of the blue. Very exciting for me, because I knew who Tim Moore was. I've spoken to Tim in the past. I knew the relevance of Tim in terms of what he means to Eternal MMA as a former flyweight champion, as a man that competed on the first 3 Eternal MMA cards. So, kind of one of the OGs on this scene, and especially for Eternal MMA. But, in terms of when I first started kind of coming into Eternal MMA and watching fights, like his time was sort of well before mine. So it's been really cool kind of getting to look back on Tim's career and everything that, he means to, the flyweight division here at Eternal MMA, or just Eternal MMA in general. So to see him come back for another fight in a fight that he was calling as his retirement fight, but after speaking on the podcast, his mind's sort of still open to it, depending on how this fight kind of goes down. But, coming up against Rod Costa, who's obviously a fan favorite, obviously massive in Perth, coming over to the Gold Coast now. This one being in a catchweight fight. We know all about Rod Costa, of course, a former featherweight challenger for Eternal MMA. Of course, he's lost his bantamweight belt, but I mean, like everything you can say about Rod Costa, man, like never turns down a fight, always willing to scrap. I don't think I've ever talked to a more straight shooter in my life than a guy like Rod Costa. I think Rod Costa was one of the first guys that I ever talked to in Eternal MMA. And I'm always pumped for Rod Costa, win, lose, or draw. But to see him come up, in this fight against a returning legend like Tim Moore, these are actually a couple of guys that faced each other in a grappling event late last year that went the way of Rod Costa, which, of course, doesn't necessarily surprise me given the grappling acumen of Rod Costa, a former IBJJF medalist, one of the best grapplers in the country, and you could probably include the world and all that too. But this one's, of course, an MMA fight here, so, the playing field's been leveled a little bit. This one's cool. This is a fun matchup. Whatever happens beyond that for a guy like Tim Moore, look, I don't care. But this is just cool to see him back against a couple of guys that are very well respected in Eternal MMA and Australian MMA at large.
Yeah, man, this is awesome. I didn't know this fight was happening until we were live on the broadcast, and it popped up on one of the graphics. I was like, it's a sneaky little one
it's cool
to throw on there. I was like, it's really cool, man. He fought on the first MMA at Southport, first 3 shows, I think he was on, Tim Moore, and has fought them all, man. Like if you jump on his list, I need to do this actually and go back down memory lane and look at some of the fights he's had. He's had about 20 fights. Professional fights, and his last fight that I remember was versus Astro Boy Steven Ursig. So, he's fighting the best. 6 kgs removed from flyweight, all but in this one. This one is a catchweight fight, I believe. 63. Yeah. 63 kgs, but he's looking good, mate. Looks like he's been bathing in,
he's in great shape,
creatine gel and putting whey protein on his cornflakes. So, dad life does different things to all of us. Luke, I know what it did to me. Wish it
I don't
did
look
to me
like that,
what
mate.
it did to more.
It's coming. It's not quite there, but it's like
There's a doctor we can go see, bro. And I know a guy.
Thanks, mate. Pass me details,
Tim Moore, man, he was always a really entertaining fighter, and I'm sure he still is. That 6 years is a long time to have off, right? It's a long time to have off. I know he got back into it. I was talking to Brenton. They got him back into for Shannon Ross to help with his preparation when he was working towards the Contender Series. And he's looking the goods, man. He's looking the goods by all accounts. 6 years is a long time to kind of work on new things and add new strings to your bow. MMA has changed a lot in 6 years since Tim Moore last fought. And I think we'll be seeing some the old dog's got some new tricks up his sleeve. He always had like the real unorthodox timing. He can be a little bit herky-jerky, uses his kicks really well. He's a very good grappler. And you spoke to the fact that these two met in a grappling only submission only tournament. There's a real difference, and you acknowledged it, between pure grappling and MMA grappling, where there's punches involved. You know, you can throw up BJJ problems, but there's often an MMA answer, which is a fist to the face. So it'll be interesting to see how Tim Moore approaches this one. Look, with Rod Costa, the way that he approaches fights is always pretty much the same way. He's of course sort of a medalist at the Worlds. Excellent jiu-jitsu. When he's just got a crazy squeeze. Very good wrestling, particularly up against the fence off the single leg. A really underrated conventional MMA boxing. So the way he rolls his guard is very effective. He's able to counter guys with the lead hook. He's very sharp with his jab. He's got great low kicks. He's very, very hard to put away. In fact, I'm not sure if Rod Costa's been finished apart from Van Heeden up at featherweight, I don't think, which was his last opponent up at featherweight. Before that,
is accurate.
It was spot on.
Yeah.
Before that, it was Kuya Ito for the bantamweight title, and that was incredibly close. And I know that left a bit of a sour taste in his mouth. He's still got a point to prove. I don't think it would be fair to say these guys are at similar places in their career. Like Rod Costa's still right up there at the top, and that's where Tim Moore's rejoining the party, right at the top of the pack. So whatever happens, it's going to be incredibly entertaining and a real treat for Australian MMA fans to see these two veterans go at it.
Yeah, it is. Like you said, when this fight first got announced on the telecast there, like just sort of out of nowhere, it was like just a fun little surprise, little treat kind of fight, smashed right there in the middle of the main card. I reckon, like, outside of, you talk about the fights to look forward to, like obviously the title fight and the returning Josh Kuhn and everything, like this is not even necessarily for whatever the outcome will be. I'm just curious to see how it goes down, like to see, what Tim Moore is going to look like in his return. We just talked about how ripped he's sort of looking and everything, like just so much time off, like time to work on his body and everything as well. And then to see, where Rod Costa's at, in terms of, you talk about them being in different parts of their career, but just, I'm curious to know, after not speaking to Rod for a while, like, what his sort of plans are for the rest of his career and what a potential win here at catchweight means for him. I know, you talk about that loss to Kuya Ito and what was a very close fight. He was keen to run that one back. I don't know if that's something that's potentially in the plans or not, but he's still, very invested in his career. You talk about a guy that's, a hard guy to put away. Like, we've seen him take some punishment inside the cage and keep going. So you want to talk about a guy with heart. Like, I don't think you can point to another man on the Eternal MMA roster and say that man has more heart than Rod Costa. Maybe you could say they're equal to him. But you look back at even like his fight against Jack Jenkins, and we know what Jack Jenkins does to people's legs. Rod, you could look at the guys that a guy like Jack Jenkins has fought and kicked the shit out of inside his UFC career, and no one stood up to the kicks like Rod Costa has. So I know that's like probably a bittersweet title for Rod to kind of hear out loud that he took an ass kicking better than anyone else, but he's certainly given out plenty of his own as well. And you talk about that kind of underrated striking that he's got. He got that nickname Kickboxer Costa a little while ago for showing off flashes of that, for a guy that lost to Justin Van Heerden, also has a knockout win over Justin Van Heerden as well. So he's certainly got the tools there. So we'll see how that fight plays out. Very much looking forward to that one. But we get a welterweight fight underneath that one. Peter Templar versus Dylan Lahari. Now, Peter Templar, people will know or did get very familiar with Peter Templer when he came up against his former training partner from then Mackay MMA and now retired former welterweight champion Lachlan Deadshot Stitt in a fight that many or pretty much everyone was writing Peter Templer off in from his last fight, and he got the job done over a very, very dangerous and capable former champion Lachlan Deadshot Stitt. Now he's training down at CMBT now. This is his first camp down at CMBT. So when you talk about the CMBT guys, so many of these dudes are coming in on the card. What better gym you get yourself into for this one here? A guy that really turned his career around, started his career 0-2, and then went on to win his next couple of fights by way of finish as well. You talk about a guy that's a real submission threat. He's a massive submission threat. His last couple of fights, he's won by submission. You might want to touch on something there too. For his first couple of fights, his first pro fight was against a little-known David Martinez, who's the current welterweight champion there as well. So, Peter Templer is a guy that actually hasn't fought. I would have to refer back to Tapology, but I think it was, the last fight against Lachlan Stitt was May 2023. I didn't realize this until very recently, but it looks like in the time of his layoff, he's actually been competing a lot in Muay Thai. So, I have to assume that's potentially by design, either by his own mind or, something maybe with his coaches where they've said, hey, let's park the MMA stuff right now. Let's just get you into some Muay Thai fights and really kind of sharpen the tools with the hands and the legs. I've got to imagine that was potentially part of the plan, and then keep the MMA sort of train rolling. Very similar to a guy I talked to in Farhood Kalapbar recently where, they put a lot of things on hold and then just jiu-jitsu comps. Let's focus on one kind of tool only. So I'll be really interested to see what Peter Templer brings to the cage next time, because last time, when he fought against Lachlan Deadshot Stitt, he was just wanting to take the fight to the ground, and that's where he finished it by sub. So I'll be curious to see if he shows off more tools here. But going up against a guy in Dylan Lahari out of Melbourne from Absolute MMA, who I only know parts about Dylan Lahari, but everything I've seen from Dylan Lahari and everything the Absolute MMA boys talk about in terms of him, one of the best wrestlers, one of the best kind of grapplers that's, just coming up in the scene now, who's a 1-0 fighter in his pro career, real submission threat, real game grappler, had a nice little amateur career at 7-2 as well. And training with the guys down there. The aforementioned Jack Jenkins and, Alistair Boulders and, a lot of guys obviously got down there in that gym in Melbourne for Absolute MMA. This one going down in the welterweight division between a couple of real hungry up-and-comers. What do you think about this fight, brother?
Yeah, Dylan Lahari, super familiar with him. I get on really well with Dylan. We had a good chat last weekend. He is a very good grappler. They're pretty. I think Simon Carson likes to sandbag his boys out there at Absolute. I think he's a purple belt or something, but that's not an indication of his level of grappling by any means. When I watched Dylan fight and watch him hit submissions, what I noticed about him is he's a very opportunistic grappler. So some guys are just very very apt at pattern recognition and seizing an opportunity to get someone out of there with a submission. And the way he does it is very quick, and he's got a broad range of skills on the ground. He's got a lot of little systems at play that work very well for him. I think with Dylan, because he's been so successful on the ground, I think it would be dangerous to underestimate his abilities on the feet. Dylan's got excellent striking, and they've got a Thai trainer there, absolute, called Liam Tong. Liam Tong is my old trainer from Thailand when I was training at Phuket Top Team about 10 years ago now in Chalong. Liam Tong, while he's a Thai trainer, he comes from Muay Thai. He's a Channel 7 stadium fighter, which is one of the most prestigious stadiums in Bangkok. And to fight there, you have to be the bee's knees. Also fought at Raja and the Old Lumpini, so he's very good. But he was training Michael Bisping at Phuket Top Team. He was training Chris Cyborg at Phuket Top Team. What's the other guy? Jason Knight, if you remember him. He was training,
yeah, man. I love Jason Knight.
Yeah. He was training him for his fight with Dan Hooker, actually, which is interesting. Dan Hooker was just down the road at Tiger.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago, but he's very, very good. And one of the benefits that you get from having a guy hold pads in the gym like that is repetition. You get a lot of pads, which isn't something that we're that accustomed to in the MMA world. You know, we do a lot of drilling. You might get a little bit of pads here and there with your trainer in the lead up to a fight to work specifics, but repetition is a great way of refining all your techniques, your short weapons, your knees, your elbows, and Thai trainers keep you honest too. If you're out of position, they'll crack you with the pad. So Dylan Lahari, for me, he's going to have, I think, a significant edge in the striking. The grappling is going to be interesting. Peter Templer, like you say, he has been doing some Muay Thai, and I understand why. Like when he matched up against Lockie Stitt, he was getting lit up on the feet. That's the reality. Lockie Stitt lit him up straight from the get-go, was pumping him straight down the middle, fell chest to chest in the first exchange from memory. And I think Lockie might have even taken Templer down in their first exchange. So Templer has got a very good submission game, and I think it might have been in the second time they hit the ground where Templer kind of got that sweep with the hidden arm, choke from half guard and rolled around to take the back. I'm pretty sure that's how it went down. So when this hits the ground, Templar's got excellent submission ability. I've seen some of his Muay Thai fights actually. I was watching it's a promotion up in the far north of Queensland. I was there to study another opponent. I was watching it to study an opponent, one of my guys, and saw Peter Templer pop up. I'm like, oh shit, it's the same guy. What's he doing up there in far north Queensland having a crack? So he has been brushing up on the striking, looked pretty good in those. So it's going to be a really close fight. I wouldn't be surprised if Dylan keeps us on the plate to meet and tries to test him out standing. But maybe he looks to send a statement and take it down to the ground. But it needs to be very careful. I believe that was submission of the year that Templer got back there in 2023 when he took out Lockie. So yeah, another really interesting matchup. Again, stylistically very interesting. Well done to the Eternal matchmakers.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about Peter Templer, like in his grappling and submission abilities. I mean, he's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt in his own right, and you look at his record as well as I am right now, and you look through through the amateur career and into his pro career. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 submission wins already, and each of them, from what I can tell, bar 2, all by different submissions, like an Americana on the record, an armbar on the record, a couple of rear naked chokes. Mounted triangle choke. So he's got a lot of different weapons in his submission arsenal there. But then you look at a guy like Dylan Lahari as well, and a sneaky Von Flue choke on his record there as well. So a couple little fascinating things that you can kind of look at in terms of their abilities and everything they kind of bring to the table. Definitely a fun fight there at welterweight. We have another fight at welterweight as well. Declan Wolfinden, 1-1 coming up against Connor Downey, also 1-1 in their pro career too. A guy like Declan Wolfinden coming out of Team Compton Training Centre. A guy that lost in his pro debut but went on to win his next fight at Eternal 87. Going up against a guy in Connor Downey, you talk about a submission threat. And Declan Wolfinden already earmarked him as such as being probably one of the most dangerous leg lockers in the game. So he's certainly got his eyes on what to sort of look out for when it comes to this fight. Connor Downey, also a guy that competed in his pro debut at Eternal 84 and won via heel hook there as well. So it's definitely on display in terms of what he definitely brings to the table there. But a couple of guys that are coming in 1-1 in their career are looking to one-up the other guy and go to the next phase of their career, or at least get that second win under their belt. This one going down to the welterweight division, my apologies. What do you see in this fight, man? What do you like?
So Declan Wolfinden, he fought James Wong for his comeback fight up in Perth. And Mark was so impressed. I think that was his first fight for CMBT. For Team Compton's. Fuck, I'm shocking at that. Team Compton's. And he looked incredible, man. Like, he looked so dangerous. James Wong, really dangerous guy. Very, very powerful man. Good grappler. And I think it was the front kicks, the lead leg work from Declan and his jab that really cut pieces out of James Wong. And he looked fantastic. I was really impressed. Looked like a different guy. A big, tall guy for welterweight, and he's got an excellent team behind him. So, Declan Wolfinden, ever since that fight, I've been looking forward to his return, this time doing it in his home state up there in Queensland. And against a guy like Connor Downey, who's he's a karate black belt, but he's really cutting his name into the scene as a leg lock specialist, and I'm interested to see if he continues to go with that. Guys like Ryan Hall have had a lot of success with that in the UFC at the highest level. So it is an achievable style. It's a high risk style, as Downey found out when he tried to roll underneath Nate Law, was it? Nate Law put him away with some heavy punches on top. But guys like Ryan Hall have systemized the leg lock approach.
Yeah, and he found out against Tapuria when he was doing that as well. So there is danger.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good. That's right. He absolutely smoked him. But guys like I think it's Polaris, Ken Shamrock got one at was it UFC 1, I believe. Ken Shamrock got a heel hook, and then Polaris got about another 3 back in the day. But yeah, Ryan Hall, Marcin Held, guys like this have done a really good job of doing it. Plus, it's not just about attacking the leg, as I'm sure Connor Downey knows. His gym a very good grappling academy. Guys like Charles Oliveira use it to create scrambles, and when you create a scramble from a leg lock position, guys often turn to free their knee line and they expose their back, and the back becomes available. So there's some metas that you can apply to the leg lock game, and I hope that Connor Downey goes, you know what, I'm going to be a leg lock specialist. I'm going to have an Minari roll on everybody and try and take them out that way, because that's incredibly exciting. And yeah, it's a tough ask against a guy like Declan, who's very long, very, very tall, long guy. I think he's a brown belt as well. He certainly was back in Perth, I remember, putting my notes together. And brown belts know how to deal with the leg locks. You get the hips back, you create space, you prevent the inversion, and you punch them in the face. So it's an exciting one. Don't underestimate Connor Downey's striking, though. He's karate black belt. He's got some good blitzing footwork to get inside and hit. He's a well-muscled guy. Another interesting one, another interesting fight.
Yeah, I do want to make a correction there too. When I was handing out faux plaudits for Von Flue chokes on Dylan Lahari there. It wasn't Dylan Lahari. It's actually one of the men we're talking about right now in Declan Wolfenden that has a Von Flue choke on his record there. So sorry, Dylan. Plenty of submissions on your record there too, but that isn't one of them. I'll give that back to Declan Wolfenden there with the Von Flue choke on his amateur record. And a guy like Connor Downey, I mean, you look at a guy that, has some mixed results through his amateur career and now his pro career, but I don't know whether you call him kill or be a kill, but hasn't seen a final bell yet in his career for either his amateur fights or his pro fights. He's either finishing or he's getting finished. I think he also had disqualification on his record or something like that, or it was a disqualification on his record there as well. So a couple of guys that definitely both bring it there. That looks like an exciting little fight. I'll look at this next fight, which is at the first fight coming up on the main card in the pro ranks. Something that I'm very, very much looking forward to. This is a sneaky good little fight. And I'm going to butcher Markel's name here, but I want to say Markel Alayasa. I've heard a couple of people pronounce it sort of differently. Every time I listen to a different commentator pronounce his name, it's always like a little bit different. But I'm going to roll with Markel Alayasa going up against Matty Ian out of Australian Top Team. This is an incredibly fun little fight. A couple of real gamers here in the bantamweight division. Markel Alayasa training under JJ Tahuya, making his pro debut after going 4-1 as an amateur. All finishes. I mean, you talk about a little powerhouse puncher that is Markel. Watching a couple of his little fights that I did earlier, just absolutely comes in swinging like a truck. Just an absolute little wrecking ball, of power, just throwing absolute bombs. And against a guy like Matty Ian, he's had one pro fight already, and he started off his career in the right way with a win there. But training out of a gym that I'm really getting to know recently after talking to a couple of their guys, obviously I mentioned Farhud Kalapbar that I had on the podcast recently. At Australian Top Team, Matty Ian there training under Suman and Ashkan Mokhtarian. He went 6-1 in his own right as an amateur before winning his pro debut at Eternal 88. And this is a guy, and you'll talk about this, but a 4-time Australian kickboxing champion, 16-0 in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu matches. Won the most accurate striker as well when I was looking through his Instagram. I don't remember that detail in terms of Eternal putting that out, but all that was just the one pro fight, 87% accuracy in the striking department for his pro debut. So that's pretty freaking accurate, I think. That's a nice little feather in his cap there. But Matty Ian, I just want to talk about him and sort of looking at his profile and everything. Like, I love the way this kid promotes himself. I love everything that he's about on social media. I love his interviews in the cage. I love what he brings to the cage, both from a fighting perspective and just from like a charismatic perspective. I actually asked Farhood about him yesterday before coming on the pod tonight, just to get some insight. And I won't mention everything that Farhood said in terms of bigging him up, but look, this dude's a killer, and he's expecting, he said, 1,000%, this one's going to end in a finish for Matty Ian, but you can't count out Markel Aliasa because, from everything that I've seen from him, man, too, like, just absolute killer. I wouldn't be surprised if these guys just meet in the middle and throw down. Selfishly, I hope that happens. But let's see how it goes down. But yeah, this is a fun fight. This to kick us off on the main card in the bantamweight division. What do you reckon?
Yeah, Aliasa, he's like a little fire hydrant. Short little bantamweight, heavily muscled, and just loves to stand right in front of his opponents and swing from the hip, man. Yeah. But he's not just brawling either. He'll slip and roll a punch and give one back. He's got very good wrestling too. If he gets under your hips, you're going for a ride. He's got a habit of picking guys up, collecting some air miles, and slamming them down in the middle of the on the cage and pounding on them. So he can do it all, and he's got a chin and a half on him. I've seen him take some shots, man, take some big shots, and he still just keeps coming back. He fought this Thai guy up in Brisbane on another promotion, and man, I was like, this guy's chin's insane. And got rocked early and came back and won the fight. So yeah, incredibly impressive guy. I think his only loss is to Kevin Coppermel in the Amis. So and we all know how good that guy is. So yeah, dude, crazy. And then you chuck him in like a little firecracker like Aliasa and against Matty Ian. Damn, saying like this is a good match. You know, you got power and brawn versus silky skills. Matty Ian, excellent kickboxing. I think he's undefeated as a kickboxer. I love the way he stays active with his kicking game. Excellent footwork. The ATT guys have some of the best footwork in the country. They're really good at getting little positional advantages with their feet, punching to set up the kicks. Guys like Josh Togo and Suman had great footwork as well. Georges, like they all move their feet excellently, and Ian's no different. And versus like a shorter, powerful guy, like those kicks to the arms are a really good bet. You know, just kicking the inside leg, kicking the arms, take some of those power out of the arms, hit them, move to a new angle, reset, start the game again. So. A really, really fun matchup. Matty Ian, man, he brings the passion, doesn't he? He brings a little bit of emotion, even to a weigh-in here and there.
That was him, wasn't it? I can't remember the bloke's name that he fought against, but they had that little kickoff in the weigh-ins where they were sort of going at each other. Yeah. I
think I like it, man. I'm kind of the same. Like if you say something, you kind of got to back it up, and he backed it up. He backed it up in the cage and got the win, and it was all respect afterwards, which is kudos to him, man. It just goes about his business. So I'm expecting big things from Matty Ian in this division, but he's got a real test in front of him come Saturday night.
Yeah, hardened by the mean streets of Blacktown, New South Wales, is Matty Ian. So he's definitely cut his teeth there in those parts of New South Wales that I wouldn't necessarily dare to venture into. But everything that I've read about him and spoken to a couple of guys from AT&T, big hopes for him and his future career, like you just said as well. And one thing that I was looking at too, with Markel, just something when we look through our notes and his story, about where he sort of come from as well. Something that touched me a little bit was just about. Looking at he used to work in a factory as a forklift driver, and unfortunately got news when he was working there that his grandfather passed away, and that sort of sparked something in him that he wanted to leave the factory, and he walked out that day. Pardon me, losing my voice here with the fan on the floor. Left the factory that day, never came back to work there, and decided to commit everything to mixed martial arts. Really lit a fire under him, and he's committed everything to this life. Like, and all power to him. Like, good on him. I think more people should sort of do something like that. So it's really cool to sort of see the passion from a guy like Markel. be able to use something like a negative like that, from seeing his grandfather pass, and being able to turn that into something positive that is martial arts. We know the positivity that martial arts brings into people's lives, and we're seeing that with both guys like Markel and Matty Ian just at the start of their career. Can't wait to see that one go down. That's a very, very, very fun little matchup to start off our pro list of fights here on the main card. That tops off a really cool list of amateur fights there as well. We were just talking before the show and thought we'd call out a couple of good ones here. I just wanted to mention Gordon Real versus Jordan Southern for a couple of reasons, just in terms of the stylistic matchup for this one here. I started looking at Jordan Southern's career. Now, this is obviously an amateur fight here too. Now, Jordan Southern's coming off a loss against Odin Musket. Now, we know the killer that is Odin Musket and the prospect that he's being hyped up to be out of CMBT. These guys actually fought in the main event of Proving Grounds 4, of course, run by Robin O'Neill, who is, of course, competing on the amateur card herself at this Eternal 94 card there too. But Jordan Southern, while it was only a 7-minute fight and while he did get finished in that fight, I really like what I saw from him in terms of, coming forward and really sort of, really showing off to be a gamer. He does seem to have like a pretty good little striking game and, gave everything as good as he got for as long as it lasted too. And, seeing him come up against a guy like Gordon Real and seeing what he's about from a grappling perspective, he does seem to have a pretty competent little grappling game. From his last fight, I can't remember the bloke he fought in his last fight when he competed in Eternal MMA before he then fought him again in another promotion. But yeah, I'd be really interested to see how this fight goes down. Gordon Real versus, or Real, I might say, versus Jordan Southern. That is a very interesting little fight amongst a list of very interesting fights there. I know you had your eye on a couple of fights, mate, or a couple of fighters that you think are worth watching. Who should people keep their eye out for this one on the prelim card in the amateur ranks?
The name you were thinking of was Dallas
Dennis.
Dallas Dennis.
Yes.
He was the one who fought Real twice. Delisania, as some might say.
Yeah.
Delisania. Look, I'm looking forward to seeing Robin O'Neill get in there. She's only been in there twice. Struggles to get opponents at bantamweight, and of course, she's doing everything else under the sun. She runs her own promotion. She's heavily involved with the matchmaking for the prelims of Eternal. She's running around at the back, organising this and that. Spends a lot of time over in Thailand. Her first fight, if you can cast your mind back, she came up against a girl, and her boxing looked incredible, leading to the body, coming up to the head. She's very intelligent with her footwork, used her low kicks well, pressed the fight up against the cage. Very smart fighters, Robin O'Neill, and showing that that she's been around for a long time and really understands the game. Which she's coming up against a girl at a CMBT. And what's her name? Help me out with the name here, bro. Dayan, is it?
Healy Dayan.
So while it's her first mixed martial art fight, she's been around a long time. She's a purple belt under Lockie Giles from Absolute down here in Victoria. It's been a purple belt since about 2022 because I saw it. Pretty sure I saw it Pampax or the Vix or something. She's very, very good. And to be a purple belt under Lockie Giles, you're the real deal. He's one of the best guys that we have in Australia. Excellent half guard system. He's got a system for just about anything. Go and buy them now off BJJ Fanatics. She's a very good wrestler. Formerly started a Muay Thai journey up at Wolves Den with Steve Walton. So she's been around a long, long time, this chick, and now at CMBT on the Gold Coast since last year. Where they've got a lot of smaller fighters for her to train with. So this is a really interesting fight. Robin O'Neill, her return to the cage after she went up against that really tall girl, Mackenzie Jean, a really difficult problem to solve. So looking forward to seeing Robin go up against Dayan on the prelims.
Yeah, it's. I'm going to call it now. We'll see a finish at the start of this prelim card. I don't think there's ever been an Eternal MMA card that doesn't involve a finish at the start there. But yeah, good shout out to and good to see the girls back in the cage. I would love to see some more, women's fights, here in Australia. It'd be great to see. See some more of the girls in there. Who are we calling out here? Kim Tran?
Yeah, we get my girl Kim Tran back. It was my girl Kim Tran. She's 1-0 strawweight, can't find an opponent. She's in Thailand at the moment. She'll be back soon to take over the strawweight division here in Australia. Kim Tran, get on board, toot motherfuckers.
Remember the name, baby. I love it. Hell yeah.
Hey, just one more, Luke, and I think this one it would be remiss not to give this one a shout out. That's the feature prelim bout. She's Max Davidson. He's the number 1 ranked amateur featherweight in the country. Incredibly exciting guy, really, really experienced. He's taken on.
Was he an Eternal 90 or Eternal 91, I think, late last year? I'm not looking at Tapology, I'm not cheating here, but I think I remember seeing him there and being impressed with him, yeah.
Yeah, he copped one of his first L's, I think, against in a split decision, really, really close split decision. He still holds the pole position, though, true to the testament of his form over recent years. Won't have long left in the amateur ranks, and if he can get through Cage Fisher, who's Primal MMA's lad out in Sunbury in Regional Vic, Jim, who our team get on really well with, the two Fisher boys and the bro Joel. Very small gym out there, but realizing incredible success. So Cage Fisher, mate, this kid, he's the younger of the two brothers. His right hand's an absolute cannon. So whatever he's fighting in, you chuck him in a Tiddlywinks tournament, he'd find an opportunity to throw his right hand. But excellent grappling. Both those boys have always been good, really, really high-level grapplers. So Fisher jumping in on relatively short notice to make a party for our feature prelim event. That's one that you don't want to miss.
You don't want to miss that. If you do want to catch the prelims, they're usually on eternalmma.com, and I'm sure they will be back on eternalmma.com for that one, where you can, of course, get your tickets if there are, in fact, any tickets left for that one, going down in just a couple of short days, March 15th, for that one there. So, of course, the main card will be live and exclusive on UFC Fight Pass. So if you're not going there in person, make sure you get yourself onto UFC Fight Pass and check out an absolutely incredible night of fights, top to bottom. Like we said, Darcy Vendy taking on Matt Myers in the main event there for the Eternal MMA Middleweight Championship, followed by an absolute cracking list of fights. Josh Kuhn finally back into the cage. What a highlight reel he is. The returning Tim Moore. So many good fights there to look at, right from the opening bell to the top of the last fight. You'll be there. I'll be sitting on my couch with the best little seat in the house outside of yours, man, with a beer in my hand, checking out the fights. Cannot wait for this one to go down. We'll talk about it all when the fights get done. Talk about all the highlights that I'm sure happened. Got a lot to live up to, given the amount of finishes that we had in the last card for Eternal 93. So we'll see if Eternal 94 can go one better here. But I don't doubt the list of fighters on there, because so many people on there ready to bring the heat. Let's see how it goes down. But thanks always for your time, man. Always love your insight. The best in the game, man. Best with the analysis. Best on the mic when it comes to the commentary. So always a pleasure to get your thoughts and feelings on how it's all going to go down. We'll do it all next time.
Thanks very much.
That was huge.